Ethan had always thought of himself as an average guy. He worked as a mechanic back on Earth, lived in a small apartment, and spent most of his days fixing old machines. He never imagined that his life would take such a strange turn. He was on a simple mission to a remote alien planet, just a routine checkup with the intergalactic medical team stationed there. It was supposed to be an easy visit, nothing out of the ordinary. But that all changed when he stepped into the medical bay. The alien doctors, who had a reputation for being excellent, had always treated their patients with great care. The clinic was clean, and the machines were advanced, unlike anything Ethan had ever seen back home. He was supposed to get a quick scan, a few tests, and then head back to his shuttle. It should have been a simple procedure. However, when the results came back, everything took a shocking turn. Ethan watched as the medical team exchanged worried glances. One of the doctors, a tall, slender alien with green skin and dark eyes, turned to him with an expression of disbelief. "Mr. Ethan, there seems to be an error in the results. You need to see this." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had been through medical scans many times before, but something about this felt different. He stepped forward, glancing at the screen. It was full of strange alien symbols and charts, but one thing was clear. His name was there, and it was linked to something or someone he didn't expect. "What is this?" Ethan asked, trying to hide the confusion in his voice. This doesn't make any sense," the doctor said, scanning through the data again. "It shows that you are the biological father of a child. A hybrid child." Ethan stared at the screen. His mind raced. He had never been to this planet before. In fact, he had never even met any aliens outside of the medical team here. The idea of him being the father of a child was ridiculous. "I'm sorry. I think there's been some mistake. I've never been with anyone on this planet, let alone have a child here," Ethan said, his voice steady, though his mind was starting to spin. The alien doctor nodded, his expression serious. "We are aware. We believe there's been a mistake in our records, but these results indicate otherwise. You are listed as the biological father of a child we have been studying. The genetic material matches yours." Ethan's mind was reeling. He had no memory of ever being involved with any alien. He'd only come to this planet for a routine visit, not to become part of some strange experiment. "This doesn't make sense. I've never been with anyone here. There must be an error with your equipment or your testing methods," Ethan insisted. The doctor seemed to agree, but his face remained troubled. "We will need to run more tests, Mr. Ethan. This is unlike anything we have ever seen before. You are, in fact, linked to a child here. We need to find out how this is possible." Ethan's heart was racing. He had always thought of himself as a practical person, someone who understood machines and technology. But this was beyond anything he could understand. The doctor left the room to confer with the other medical staff, leaving Ethan alone in the sterile white room. His thoughts were spinning. How could this be? He wasn't married. He had no children, certainly not any alien children. He'd been careful in his life, never getting involved with anything that could lead to something like this. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor returned with another aliena woman this time, smaller in stature with pale blue skin. She introduced herself as Dr. Mella, a lead geneticist. "I'm sorry for the confusion, Mr. Ethan," Dr. Mella said gently. "We've double-checked the results, and the data is accurate. It appears that you are indeed the father of a child on our planet." Ethan looked between the two doctors, still in disbelief. "But how is this possible? I've never even been near anyone on this planet, let alone ... father to child." Dr. Mella took a deep breath. There's a possibility, a theory, that this may have something to do with an experimental procedure we were conducting. We were trying to mix different genetic materials in an effort to heal a dying species here. Somehow, your genetic code was involved, though we do not yet understand why. Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel. He had no idea how his DNA had gotten involved in some alien experiment. But there was one thing that was clear. Somehow he was connected to a child on this planet, a child he had never met. His world was suddenly turned upside down. A sense of responsibility started to build in him. What did this mean? for the child. What would happen to the child now that they knew about this connection? How could Ethan even begin to understand the role he was supposed to play in all of this? The doctors looked at him with concern, as if they were waiting for him to process everything they had told him. But Ethan had no answers, only questions. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. What happens now? He asked, his voice steady, but his mind still in shock. We need to meet the child, Dr. Mella said softly. You need to see her. Ethan walked quietly behind Dr. Mella and the other alien doctors as they led him through the sterile hallways of the medical facility. Mind was still reeling from what he had just learned. How could he be the father of a child on a planet he had never visited before? He had only come for a routine checkup, as they passed various rooms filled with advanced alien equipment. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He had never imagined his life could turn into a puzzle that he didn't know how to solve. Finally, they stopped in front of a large observation window. Dr. Mella turned to him, her face serious but kind. This is where we keep the child, she said. Her name is Leora. She has been part of an experiment we've been conducting, but until now we didn't know her connection to you. Ethan peered into the room beyond the window. Inside, he could see a small child playing with a set of strange alien toys. She was young, maybe 6 or 7 years old. And though her skin was a soft shade of purple, there was something familiar about her. It was as if he could feel a connection to her, even from a distance. She's beautiful, Ethan whispered. Without thinking, Dr. Mella smiled softly. Yes, she is. But she's also unlike any other child we've studied. Her DNA is a mix of multiple species, and it has given her abilities we can't fully understand yet. Ethan watched as Leora played, unaware of his presence. She was a curious sight. Her movements were graceful, and there was an intensity in her eyes that made it hard to look away. Ethan had no idea what kind of abilities Dr. Mella was talking about, but it was clear that Leora wasn't an ordinary child. She looks smart, Ethan said, his voice tinged with awe. She is, Dr. Mella replied. Her intelligence level is far beyond what we expected for someone her age. Been able to learn languages faster than we can keep up. We think her hybrid DNA has given her enhanced cognitive abilities. Ethan's mind raced as he processed the information. Hybrid DNA. None of this made sense. How was it possible that his own DNA was a part of this? She's mine? He asked, almost as if speaking to himself. The words felt strange, like they didn't belong in his mouth. Dr. Mella nodded. Yes, somehow your genetic material became part of her creation. We don't fully understand the science behind it, but the tests are clear. You are her biological father. Ethan felt a strange pull in his chest as he stared at Leora. There was no way he could deny it now. Something in his heart told him that this child, this alien girl, was somehow a part of him. But the question still lingered. How had this happened? He could ask more questions. The door to the observation room opened. A Nursen alien with bright blue skin came in and called out to Leora. Leora, sweetie, we have a visitor today, she said in a soft, melodic voice. Leora looked up, her sharp eyes immediately locking onto Ethan through the window. For a moment, the child didn't move. She just stared at him, her expression unreadable. And slowly she stood up and walked toward the door. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. What was happening? How did this child know he was there? The nurse smiled and gestured for Leora to step out. Go ahead, honey. Say hello. Leora stepped into the hallway, her gaze never leaving Ethan. She was a little taller than he had expected, but there was something about her presence that felt wise beyond her years. As she stood in front of him, Leora tilted her head as if trying to make sense of Ethan. Her eyes, a deep shade of violet, seemed to study him in a way that felt both comforting and unsettling. Are you my father? Leora asked in a voice that was soft yet steady. Ethan was taken aback. How could she know? He'd never seen her before, never met her, and yet she seemed so sure. The connection he felt with her deepened, and he suddenly understood. that she had known all along. Somehow, in some strange way, she recognized him. I guess so, Ethan replied, his voice thick with emotion. I'm your father, Leora. Mora, for a moment, neither of them said anything. They just stood there, looking at each other. Then, to Ethan's surprise, Leora smiled. It wasn't a typical smile for a child her age. It was a smile full of understanding, like she knew something he didn't. Good, she said simply. I've been waiting for you. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight, and Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't know what this all meant, but something told him that this was just the beginning. Leora's life and his own were now tied together in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. Dr. Mellis stepped forward, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. She's a special child, Mr. Ethan. There's much we need to learn about her, and about your connection to her. But for now, we're just grateful you've come. She's been waiting for you. Ethan looked down at Leora, whose violet eyes never left him. He felt a deep responsibility settle in his chest. Whatever happened next, he knew he couldn't walk away from this. There was a bond between them, one that went beyond biology. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he understood what it meant to be a father. Ethan sat in the small, quiet room, watching Leora play with her strange toys. The alien medical facility was filled with bright lights and humming machines, but in that moment, it felt far away. The reality of what was happening still hadn't fully settled in. He had come here for a routine medical checkup, and now he found himself staring at a child he never knew existed, a child who, somehow, was his daughter. Leora was unlike any child he had ever seen. She was small, but her eyes held an intensity that made Ethan feel like she understood more than he did. She was playing with blocks that seemed to float above her hands, guiding them gently into place with just a small movement of her fingers. Ethan had seen strange technology before, but watching her manipulate these blocks so effortlessly felt unreal. Dr. Mellis stood beside him, watching quietly. She had been giving Ethan some space, but it was clear that she was just as fascinated by Leora as Ethan was. Her eyes followed every move Leora made, as if searching for answers. She's something special, isn't she? Dr. Mella asked softly. Ethan nodded, still unable to take his eyes off the child. I had no idea I could have a child here, let alone ... her. His voice trailed off as he tried to make sense of it all. Dr. Mellis smiled. Gently. You're not the first human to have unexpected encounters with our species. But this ... this is something completely different. Leora's abilities, her intelligence, they're all beyond what we anticipated, and you, Mr. Ethan, are the key. Ethan felt a cold chill in his chest at those words. He was the key?
And what?
Did that mean he wasn't sure if he wanted to know? Can I talk to her? He asked, his voice hesitant. Dr. Mellon nodded and stepped back, giving him the space he needed. Ethan walked toward Leora, who had stopped playing and was now looking up at him with her violet eyes. For a brief moment, she didn't move, just stared at him. Ethan took a deep breath, his heart racing. He wasn't sure how to begin. Hey, Leora, he said, his voice soft but warm. I'm Ethan. I guess I'm your father. Leora tilted her head, studying him with a look that made Ethan feel as though she was reading his every thought. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she simply stood up and walked over to him, her small feet making no sound on the floor. When she stopped in front of him, she reached up with one hand, touching his face lightly. Ethan stood still, surprised by the gesture. You look like me, Leora said quietly, her voice gentle but clear. I knew you were my father. Ethan felt a wave of emotions rush over him. How could this child know? He'd never met her, never even known she existed. And yet there she was, looking at him as though she had always known who he was. How? ... How do you know that? Ethan asked, his voice trembling slightly. Leora simply smiled, a calm, knowing smile that made Ethan's heart swell with an emotion he couldn't fully describe. I know, she repeated softly, her eyes never leaving his. Dr. Mella stepped forward again. Breaking the quiet moment between father and daughter, Leora has always been ... different. From the moment she was born, she has had an understanding of things far beyond her years. It's as if she can sense things, feel things, in a way we don't completely understand. Ethan glanced back at Dr. Mella. But she's just a child. How could she know all of this? Dr. Mella sighed. Abilities are part of the hybrid experiment. We combined various species, genetic materials, to help cure a dying race here. Leora's creation was meant to be a breakthrough in medical science, but it has become much more than we expected. Her mind is evolving faster than we anticipated, and her connection to you. It's unlike anything we've ever studied. Ethan turned back to Leora, who was still standing in front of him, waiting patiently. He couldn't help but feel a deep connection to her now. Despite everything, despite the shock and the confusion, there was a bond that was undeniable. Leora, I don't know how any of this happened, Ethan said, his voice soft. But I promise I'm not going anywhere. I'll take care of you. I don't know how, ... but I will. Leora's smile grew a little wider, and for the first time, Ethan saw a flicker of something like hope in her eyes. She didn't speak, but the way she looked at him told him she understood. The next few moments passed in silence, as Ethan simply sat next to her, unsure of what to say next. He was a man who had always dealt with machines, who understood how things worked in the physical world. But this was different. He didn't know how to be a father to an alien child, especially one who was so much more than any child he had ever imagined. Dr. Mella watched them quietly from the side. She could see the bond forming between them. And though she had her doubts about the future, she knew one thing for sure. Ethan was the key to helping Leora. And Leora, for all her uniqueness, needed her father more than anything. Mr. Ethan, Dr. Mella said softly, there's a lot more we need to learn about Leora's abilities. But right now it's important that you understand the gravity of this situation. The galaxy will soon take an interest in her, and we don't know what that might mean for both of you. Ethan nodded slowly, his thoughts racing. I'd never thought he'd be in this position, father to an alien child, caught in the middle of a mysterious and dangerous situation. But as he looked at Leora, who was now resting her head on his shoulder, he knew one thing. He would do whatever it took to protect her. Ethan's world had completely changed in just a few days. From being a simple mechanic on Earth, he was now a father to a mysterious alien child named Leora. As the days passed, he spent more time with her, getting to know her, trying to understand the strange connection they shared. But with each passing day, new questions arose, and the answers only seemed to bring more confusion. One evening, as he sat in the small medical facility's waiting room with Leora, Dr. Mella entered, her expression serious. She had a certain urgency in her step that caught Ethan's attention. We need to talk, Dr. Mella said, motioning for Ethan to follow her. Leora, who had been playing with her floating blocks, looked up and smiled at him, but Ethan knew something was wrong. He followed Dr. Mella through the sterile hallways of the facility, his thoughts racing. What could be so urgent? Had something happened to Leora? Was there a problem with her health? They reached a small office, where a group of alien officials was gathered. Ethan had never seen these individuals before, but their presence was commanding, and they gave off an air of authority. Their sharp, unblinking gazes turned to him as he entered the room. Mr. Ethan. One of the officials spoke, his voice deep and stern. You've caused quite a stir. Ethan looked around, confused. What do you mean? I've only been here for a few days. What's going on? The official who had spoken, a tall alien with skin that shimmered like polished metal, leaned forward. You are the father of Leora, the child that was created in the hybrid experiment. This is not just a medical discovery, Mr. Ethan. This is a political matter. We believe your involvement in her creation will have far-reaching consequences, and the galaxy is already starting to take notice. Ethan's heart sank. Political. He had no interest in galactic politics. He was just a father trying to make sense of his daughter's strange existence. Why does it matter? Ethan asked, his voice rising slightly. I'm just trying to figure out how this happened. I don't care about politics. I just want to make sure Leora is safe. The alien official stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. We understand that, Mr. Ethan, but you must understand that Leora is not just any child. She is the first successful hybrid of multiple species. Her abilities, her very existence, are unlike anything the galaxy has seen before.
Ow.
There are factions in the galaxy that would see her as either a weapon or a tool for power. They will stop at nothing to control her. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had known that Leora was special, but he hadn't realized just how much attention she would attract. His daughter was caught in a storm she had no part in creating, and now it was up to him to protect her. Are you saying that you can't protect her? Ethan asked, his voice low. That you can't protect her from these ... factions? The alien official hesitated, then spoke again. We can protect her for now, Mr. Ethan, but there are forces out there that will stop at nothing to get their hands on her. And you being her father are now involved in this too. The galaxy will soon be divided over what to do with her. You must decide what role you want to play in this. Ethan stood in silence, trying to process the gravity of what was being said. He had always thought of his life as simple, straightforward, but now it felt like everything was spinning out of control. He had a daughter and alien hybrid child who was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Somehow that made him a target. I don't want any part of your politics, Ethan said, his voice firm. All I care about is making sure she's safe. If that means Levy, NG this planet, then we'll leave. But I'm not going to sit here and let anyone use her or me. The alien official studied Ethan for a long moment, then nodded. You're not the first human to have to make such a choice. But this is not just a matter of leaving. There are those in the galaxy who would hunt you down, who would use Leora's abilities for their own gain. Running won't be enough. Ethan clenched his fists, his frustration growing. Then what am I supposed to do? What do you want me to do? We need you to be a part of the solution, the official said. We need you to help us protect her. There are others who can help, but we need your cooperation. Leora is connected to a future larger than any of us. We can't do this alone. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't a politician. He was just a mechanic who had been thrown into this mess, but now it seemed that he had no choice. His daughter's future and his own were tied to decisions he never thought he'd have to make. What do you need me to do? Ethan finally asked, his voice steady. The alien official looked at him with a sense of respect in his eyes. For now, stay close to Leora. We will begin preparing for the challenges ahead. There will be threats, Mr. Ethan, but we will help you navigate them. You are not alone in this. As Ethan left the room, his mind was heavy with the weight of what he had just heard. There were powerful forces out there who wanted his daughter, and now they wanted him too. He wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was certain. He was going to do everything in his power to protect Leora. No matter what it took, the days had passed quickly, and Ethan still couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his chest. Since his conversation with the alien officials, he had become more aware of the gravity of his situation. He wasn't just a father now. He was caught in a web of galactic politics. The stakes were higher than he ever imagined. Leora had been acting strangely too. The more time they spent together, the more Ethan noticed that her behavior was different from that of any normal child. She was intelligent, yes, but there was something else, something beyond her age. It was as if she knew things she couldn't have possibly learned yet, things that were far beyond what any child should know. One evening, while Leora played with her floating blocks in the corner of their small living quarters, Ethan sat at a table, going through the documents Dr. Mella had provided him. He had been trying to piece together the truth about how he was involved in all of this. The documents were filled with complicated medical terms and alien language. But there was one sentence that caught his attention. The genetic experiment resulted in a hybrid capable of far-reaching abilities, ones that could change the future of the galaxy. Her father's involvement was never planned, but now he is central to her existence. Ethan's heart raced. He knew that Leora was special. But this was bigger than anything he could have imagined. The experiment wasn't just about curing a dying species or advancing medical science. Leora's existence was somehow tied to the future of the entire galaxy. But how and why was he an ordinary human mechanic, the key to all of this? Ethan rubbed his eyes and leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. It was overwhelming, and the more he uncovered, the less he understood. He had to find out more. He had to know the full story. His thoughts were interrupted when Leora's soft voice filled the room. "Are you worried, Papa?" Ethan looked up, surprised by her question. She wasn't looking at him. Instead, she was focused on her toys. But there was something about her tone that made his stomach drop. How did she know he was worried? Worried? "No, Leora, I'm not worried," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. "Just thinking, that's all." Leora tilted her head, her violet eyes fixed on him. "You're thinking about me, aren't you? About how I'm different?" Ethan froze. Breath caught in his throat. He hadn't told her anything about his thoughts, but somehow she knew. "Yes, I'm thinking about you," he said quietly. "You're very special, Leora, more than I ever expected." Leora smiled, a small, knowing smile. "I know, I've always known. I'm different because of you, Papa." Ethan didn't know how to respond, had so many questions, but somehow he couldn't bring himself to ask her. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a connection that was deeper than words. Later that evening, after Leora had fallen asleep, Ethan sat alone in the dim light of their quarters. His thoughts were still racing, but now there was a new determination in his heart. He needed answers, and he couldn't rely on anyone else to give them to him. He had to uncover the truth for himself. He stood up and made his way to the central hub of the facility, where Dr. Malah's office was located. It was late, and the halls were quiet. The place was eerily still, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. But Ethan wasn't going to wait any longer. When he reached Dr. Malah's office, he knocked twice, but there was no answer. He tried the door, and to his surprise, it was unlocked. He hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open. Dr. Mela was sitting at her desk, her back turned to him as she stared at a glowing screen filled with complex data. "Dr. Mela?" Ethan called softly. She turned around quickly, clearly startled. "Mr. Ethan? What are you doing here? It's late. You should be resting." "I need to know the truth," Ethan said, his voice firm. "I can't keep going on like this. Not knowing what's really going on. I need to know everything about Leora, about the experiment, about why my DNA was involved." Dr. Mela sighed deeply, her expression filled with concern. "I told you, the experiment was meant to be a medical breakthrough. We were trying to save a dying species, and your DNA was why my DNA," Ethan interrupted. "How did I get involved? I wasn't even part of the project. I'm just a mechanic. Why would you need my genetic material?" Dr. Mela looked down at her desk, her fingers lightly tapping on the surface. "I didn't plan for this, Mr. Ethan. It wasn't supposed to happen. But when we started experimenting with different genetic strands, we discovered something unique in your DNA, something that made you the perfect candidate to help stabilize the hybridization process." Ethan's mind raced. "What do you mean? What was in my DNA?" "We don't know yet," Dr. Mela admitted, her voice low. "But your DNA contains genetic markers that are extremely rare. It's unlike anything we've seen before. And somehow your genes were able to bond with the other species we were working with, creating a child like no other." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. His DNA, something in it had made him the key to Leora's creation. But what did that mean for him, for Leora, for their future? "We have to find out more," Ethan said, his voice firm. "I need to know. Everything. Not just from me, but for her." Dr. Mela nodded. "I'll help you, Mr. Ethan, I promise. No? But you have to understand, once this information is out there, there's no going back. The galaxy will want Leora, and they won't stop until they have her." Ethan nodded grimly. "I understand. But I'll do whatever it takes to protect her." The days had been growing heavier for Ethan. Ever since the conversation with Dr. Mela, the pressure on his shoulders had only increased. His life had gone from simple to complicated in the blink of an eye. and now he was caught in a web of choices that would affect not only his future but also Leora's. Ethan had spent countless hours trying to piece together more information about Leora, his daughter, and the mysterious experiment that had created her. He had learned that his DNA was somehow connected to her creation, but that didn't give him the full picture. He needed more answers, and more than that. He needed to understand what was truly at stake. One evening, as Leora slept soundly beside him, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat in the small room, staring at the walls, thinking. The reality of the situation weighed heavily on him. He was not just a father now. He was the target of powerful forces, or groups in the galaxy that wanted Leora for reasons beyond anyone's understanding. She wasn't just any child. She was an extraordinary hybrid, with abilities that could shape the future of the galaxy. And Ethan, as her father, was caught in the middle of it all. He needed to protect her. That was the only thing he could be sure of. But what if running away wasn't enough? What if the galaxy was going to come after them no matter where they went? As he sat lost in his thoughts, a soft knock came at the door. It was Dr. Mella. She had always been a kind and patient presence, but tonight, she looked even more serious than usual. "Ethan," she said quietly as she stepped inside. "We need to talk. It's about Leora." Ethan stood up, concern filling him instantly. "What happened? Is she okay?" Dr. Mella nodded, but her expression remained grave. "She's fine for now, but we've just received disturbing information. The situation is worse than we thought." Ethan's stomach tightened. "What do you mean? What's going on?" "Duh. Factions, I told you about, the ones who want to control Leora. They're moving faster than we anticipated. They know about her, and they are already planning their next steps," Dr. Mella explained, her voice heavy with concern. "They're not just after her for her abilities. They want to use her as a weapon. They believe that with her, they could dominate the galaxy." Ethan's breath caught in his chest. His thoughts raced. He had always known there were risks involved, but hearing it like this, hearing the full extent of the threat, was more than he had been prepared for. "What do we do now?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Dr. Mella hesitated, her eyes searching his face. "The only way to protect Leora is to make a choice. We can try to hide her, but that will only delay the inevitable. Eventually, they will find her, and when they do, it will be too late. Or we can fight back." Ethan felt his heart beat faster. Fight back. He wasn't a soldier. He was just a regular man, a mechanic who never wanted any of this. But as he thought about Leora, as he remembered her innocent smile, her quiet strength, he knew he had to do whatever it took to keep her safe. Fighting. "How?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Mella's eyes locked onto his. "We have allies. There are others who want to stop these factions from using Leora, but they're few and far between. If you're willing to fight, we can join them. But it won't be easy and it won't be safe. The galaxy is vast, and the enemies we face are powerful." Ethan thought about Leora again. He thought about the way she had looked at him when she first recognized him as her father. He couldn't let her down. Couldn't let these forces take her. She deserved more than to be treated like a weapon. "I'll do whatever it takes," Ethan said, his voice growing stronger. "If it means protecting her, I'll fight. I don't care what it costs." Dr. Mella gave him a small, approving nod. "I knew you'd say that. But you need to understand that this choice will change everything. There's no going back once you decide to fight. You'll be marked. And Leora, she will be in more danger than ever." Ethan felt a weight settle in his chest, but his resolve did not waver. He had no other choice. Leora was his daughter, and he would do anything to protect her. "I don't care," Ethan said firmly. "If we're going to fight, then we fight. I'm not running anymore." Dr. Mella took a deep breath. "Then we need to prepare. We'll start by reaching out to our allies, and we'll need to move quickly. They'll be coming for Leora soon, and we don't have much time." Ethan nodded. "Let's do it." As they made their plans, Ethan's thoughts kept returning to Leora. He had never imagined his life would be like this, caught in the middle of a galactic conflict. He was forced to fight to protect his daughter. But as he looked at Dr. Mella, and then back at Leora, who was now stirring in her sleep, he knew this was the right choice, no matter what happened next. He was going to do everything in his power to keep her safe. He would not let anyone take her from him. And so the decision was made. The fight for Leora's future and for their own had begun. Ethan stood at the edge of the rocky outcrop, looking out over the alien planet. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the strange landscape. He had never imagined that his life would lead him here, that he would be standing on a foreign world, preparing for a battle he never wanted. But the moment he looked back at Leora sitting beside him, he knew that this was where he needed to be. She was his responsibility now. Protecting her was all that mattered. The journey had not been easy. In the days following their decision to fight, they had met with a small group of allies' resistance fighters, who were also determined to stop the factions that wanted to control Leora. The group had its own scars from previous battles. They were united by one goal: to prevent Leora from becoming a tool for war. Ethan still remembered the fear in Leora's eyes when they first told her about the danger they were in. She had been so young, so innocent, yet she seemed to understand the gravity of their situation in ways that he could not fully explain. She had asked him if they were going to be okay, and all he could do was tell her that they would fight, that they would protect each other now. As they stood side by side, ready for whatever came next, Ethan knew the battle ahead would not be easy. But with Leora by his side, he felt a surge of determination. He wouldn't let her down. "We're ready," Dr. Malah's voice broke through his thoughts. She had been a steady presence, guiding them through every step, and now she stood beside Ethan, her face set with resolve. Ethan nodded, his mind focused. "What's the next step?" Dr. Malah's eyes flickered to the horizon, where a large transport ship hovered in the sky, preparing for their departure. "We move quickly. We'll head to the outpost on the northern continent. It's our safest route for now." Ethan glanced at Leora, who was playing with a small alien toy in her hands, her concentration absolute. She seemed unaware of the tension in the air, lost in her own world. It was hard to believe that this innocent child, who seemed so ordinary, in some ways, was at the center of all this conflict. "She'll be safe with you, right?" Ethan asked, his voice quiet. Dr. Mella looked down at the young girl, a sad smile playing on her lips. "I'll protect her with my life. But we all need to stay vigilant. The galaxy is vast, and not everyone will be as kind as we are." Ethan swallowed hard. He knew the risks. They were real, and they were growing. But he couldn't let fear control him. If he did, he would never be able to protect Leora. The transport ship touched down softly, its engines humming in the cool evening air. As they boarded, Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This was at the start of a new life for them, whether they were ready or not. The weight of his responsibilities felt heavier than ever, but there was no turning back now. Inside the ship, Ethan took a seat beside Leora, who had already settled into one of the cushioned seats. She looked up at him with those wise violet eyes of hers, a quiet understanding between them. It was as if she knew what was happening, even though she didn't fully understand it. "Are we going to be okay, Papa?" she asked, her voice soft. Ethan reached out and took her hand in his. "We're going to be just fine," he said. Though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring her or himself, Dr. Mella entered the cockpit, speaking with the pilot in low tones. But Ethan could hear the urgency in her words. He knew they couldn't stay here long. Factions would be after them soon. After a few moments of silence, the ship lifted off, rising into the sky. Through the window, Ethan watched the planet below grow smaller, until it was just another dot in the vast expanse of space. This was the beginning of their new life, a life on the run, but a life that was theirs to protect. The next few weeks passed in a blur of travel, hiding, and staying one step ahead of their enemies. Ethan's thoughts were constantly on Leora, on the choices they were making. He knew they couldn't hide forever, but he also knew that this was their best chance. They had to trust in their allies and in each other as they traveled deeper into the galaxy. Ethan began to see just how much Leora had changed him. He had been a man with no purpose beyond his work, a man who had never thought much beyond his own world. But now, with Leora by his side, he was more than that. He was a father, a protector, and a man who would fight to the very end to keep his daughter safe. One night, as they camped on a quiet planet far from the reach of their enemies, Ethan sat by a small fire watching Leora as she fell asleep. The soft glow of the flames illuminated her peaceful face, and for a moment, everything felt right. He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of hope. He wasn't sure what was next for them, but as long as they had each other, he knew they could face anything. The galaxy might have thrown them into chaos, but they had something the galaxy couldn't take away each other. Leora stirred in her sleep, her small hand reaching out in her dreams. Ethan smiled and gently tucked her in, his heart full of love and determination. He had no idea what the future would bring, but one thing was certain. He would never stop fighting for her, for his daughter, for Leora.